Mic check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, who have I got?
Yeah, it's Zach.
Hey, Zach. Sorry, I don't know what happened. The other one fell through, so
Yeah, no
I'm
worries.
just waiting for the other guys to come on. So, but you just got my second. That's the final invite to this one.
Yes. Yeah, I saw your comment, and I was on the Hangouts on our just kind of waiting, and then when you invited me, the notification popped up, and I just joined it there.
Okay. Hey, Joss. Okay. Hey, James.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Having a bit of technical difficulty, but just trying to get the last, at least one more person in on this.
Yeah, no, this is kind of cool. It's a new platform for me, so.
Yeah, me too.
So who else joining us tonight?
So, me, you, Zach Albers, Joss Zeisig. I was hoping to have Scotty Coulter and Ryan McHugh and Pat Castengay, but I'm having trouble sort of confirming them. So to be honest, I may have less numbers than I'm supposed to. In a way, it is what it is. So,
Yep.
hopefully, it'll still be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I'm texting Scotty right now to see if he's able to get online. He's in contact with me saying.
Okay.
He hasn't said if he's had any trouble. He just texted me asking if I was online or not. So.
Yeah.
He says. Oh, he says he's in with all of us here.
Hey, I can hear people. It's Joss.
Hey, Joss.
Hey.
But sorry. So Scotty Coulter said he's online with us.
Scotty, you there? Yeah, he texted me saying he's in with Joss and John. So maybe he's having mic problems.
Yeah, he's not coming up. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to try to send him another invite.
I just sent a text message there to see if he's going to come on.
Yeah, I just sent him another invite, so
Yeah, I let him know.
okay. Here, just give me a second.
Tooting.
Okay.
Is Zach the green icon?
What's that?
Is that you, Zach? You're on?
I am on. I don't have video though. I don't have a webcam.
Okay. Yeah, I have a cell phone.
Well, guys, what we'll do is we'll jump right in. Some of the front end questions, can be, because it's information about you, could take us a long time. So really, we'll try to sort of rush through the first few questions so that we can put a lot more time into actually talking about the application of social media to some of the tasks. And I apologize, the dog is going to come and go throughout this. So we can talk about some of the tasks and the potential applications for social media. So what I'll do is I'll sort of get you each to introduce yourself, name the DART mission that you deployed on, the job or position you held, and a quick outline of some of the tasks that you completed while you were deployed. So James, why don't I get you to go first?
Okay, so Captain James Bohr, Canadian Armed Forces, deployed to Nepal for the earthquake in the spring of 2015 with the Influence Activities Task Force out of Kingston, Ontario.
What kind of tasks did you do while you were deployed in Nepal, James?
A lot of it was coordination between the civilian, NGO, and military entities that were on the ground. And then secondary to that was going out and actually doing surveys of the villages to see the needs of the people.
Okay, so you'd say that you had a pretty high level of interactivity with both the local nationals as well as other GOs and NGOs?
Yes, quite a bit.
Right on. Okay, Joss, I'm going to get you to go next, please. You still tracking us, Joss?
Oh, sorry. You're coming in and out. So I'm Captain Joss Isaac. I currently work at Peace Support Training Center in B Squadron, which is the Influence Activities Squadron. There, I deployed to 1301 to the Philippines in, like I said, it would have been November 2013. My job there was J3 Ops 2. So I was basically like duty officer number 4, but ended up through my bubbly, charming personality doing a CIMIC function without actually having ever been trained in CIMIC, dealing with UN OCHA, all of the NGOs that wanted Canadian Forces support to do stuff, and get out and have the opportunity to do some, I guess what you'd call CIMIC assessments of villages, and particularly the islands around the off the coast where the hurricane had traversed, to determine what damage levels were, and then ended up acting as sort of a person between NGOs and host nation authorities in order to provide aid that was and was not within the mandate of the Canadian Forces DART team.
So again, same question I asked James. It sounds like you had a pretty high level of interactivity, both with the local nationals as well as with other governmental organizations and NGOs.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Zach, over to you, please.
Okay. Captain Zach Albers, Canadian military. I work at the Influence Activities Task Force. I've been doing CIMIC and SIOPS for the last year and a half. Deployed to Nepal, same as James, in May of this past year, 2015. And my capacity there, well, I did initially a lot of assessments, as James mentioned, for the IDP camps that had been hastily established after the earthquake. So we did some needs assessments, which we brought back to our chain of command to kind of figure out where we'd actually best be employed as the Canadian Forces DART. And then later on, after we determined an area that we're going to operate in, we did a lot more assessments to figure out where we're going to send our guys out to and actually have the most effect, as well as completing the OCHA assessment forms for various villages, village district centers, and IDP camps to feed into OCHA's system so that they can help to determine where they're going to best supply or put their resources, where they could best really feed the NGOs into. And then other than that, I did a bit of a headquarters function at our headquarters in Kathmandu for the second half of my time there in Nepal.
Thanks a lot, Zach. I'm going to keep the next question to you. On a sort of totally different topic, can you tell me about your personal and professional use of social media? You know, how many hours a week do you spend on social media? Describe your proficiency in its use, and what kind of platforms do you use, and for what purpose?
Well, I'm an avid YouTube user. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. In terms of personal use, mostly, not so much for work. Same thing for Facebook. I'm not that avid. I actually was off for about 6 months, and I just came back on about a month ago. I use Facebook maybe total 2 hours a week, just kind of scrolling through and keeping updated with friends and whatnot. I don't know how to use Twitter, although I probably should know how to with my job. And really those are the two main social media platforms that I use, YouTube and Facebook, for a total between the two of them of maybe 4 hours a week.
Okay, Joss, I'll go back to you. Same question. Can you talk about your personal and professional use of and knowledge of social media?
I would say that I'm most of my social media is personal. I would say that I'm sort of an entry-level user, active on Facebook, although I try to keep my personal and professional lives separate as much as possible on Facebook, with a view to not really talking about what I do at work on Facebook. But I would say if you added up all the little bits and pieces of time that I'm on Facebook every day, I would imagine I'm probably 2 or 3, maybe even 4 hours a day just reading through Facebook, stuff like that. Not huge into YouTube, although I do a little bit of YouTube videos. I don't do Twitter at all, and for the simple reason that I'm already addicted to Facebook enough. I don't need another time-sucking thing that I will end up loving and then get really good at. So I just have avoided Twitter. We go on Pinterest quite a lot. I know 9 Pinterest users are witnesses like me and 4 other dudes on there, and I enjoy that. And that's pretty much my social media use. I don't use any social media at work whatsoever. We're into teaching. IA, CIMIC and PsyOps, mostly PsyOps. So I get a lot of feedback, and we talk a lot about how social media is used in influence activities. I don't actually do any of it myself.
Okay. And on to you, James. Same question, please. James?
I think you might be muted there, James.
Yeah. Can't hear you, James.
I think he's timing out.
James, you there?
Oh, looks like we lost him.
Rats.
Yeah. And this is Zach again. I will actually mention Joss brought up Pinterest. I just got on Pinterest a couple weeks ago, just to start checking out some ideas for getting a tattoo, actually. So I just started with that, but that's another thing that I do use very sparingly.
It's funny. I mean, it's supposed to be, aimed at at women. That's their target audience. But I tell you, there's a lot of incredible, plans to, like, if you want to build stuff like woodworking, and so it's definitely a growing platform. Sorry, I'm trying to. All the beeping in the background is Scotty and Ryan trying to get in.
Can you guys hear me?
Hey, James, I can hear you now.
Okay, so what I did is I just turned off my camera and I cut down on the bandwidth so that the microphone will work. So I use social media quite a bit, and I use it for different areas of my life. A little bit for work, and that's more to keep up on some of the developments that are happening in IA from other countries.
Okay. What kind of platforms are you using?
Yeah, so I use Twitter, I use Facebook, I use Pinterest as well because there are some awesome ideas on there. I use LinkedIn, and it basically depends on what I need to do.
Right.
But my biggest experience with the social media was I did a advocacy for kids that are deaf and hard of hearing back in 2009, and I actually used social media to condition the government before I went to Queen's Park to meet with them with the group I was leading.
Nice. That's awesome. Scott, I see we've got you on finally on board. I was still having trouble getting in touch with Ryan, but you're there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So what I'm going to get you to do is, can I just get you to introduce yourself, name the DART mission that you were deployed on, and some of the tasks that you completed while you were there?
Sure. So, Scott Coulter. I was on Task Force Nepal 2015. Some of the things we did, we were doing village assessments, coordination liaison with some of the NGOs, and that was basically it.
Based on what you said, it sounds like your interactivity with the local population as well as with NGOs and GOs was pretty high. Scott, did you get me, or?
Yep, I said it was pretty high.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say it's daily.
Okay. And can you tell me about your personal and professional use of social media?
Sure. I'm very limited. I haven't really branched out into, like, I heard James talking about LinkedIn and stuff like that. I still don't have a LinkedIn account, but Twitter, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. That's about it.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the next question. I'm going to sort of open it to the floor. Can you describe the level of connectivity, whether it's mobile, internet, social media, and usage by the local nationals that existed in the theater operations both before and following the natural disaster that you deployed for? Does anybody want to jump in on that?
Well, we went there.
I'd like to start.
Sorry, who have I got?
It's Joss. I could answer that question.
Yeah, please.
For the Philippines, anyway. So, before the disaster, social media, cell phone usage, very, very high among the the local nationals in the Philippines. Even still, I'm friends with a lot of the people that I met there that are very active on social media that with in that way. During the disaster, electricity became hurricane came through everywhere. So a new industry popped up. What we saw, generators became the most prized possession on the island at that time. With everybody's, they had the same level of codependence or dependence on you would here in North America. So everybody wanted power. Everybody wanted to be able to, not power their homes. They wanted to power their cell phones.
Right.
They wanted to charge their devices. So every place that had a generator started up this new industry where they had, cell phones $2 an hour, or $2 a charge, or whatever. Where they had their prices on a cardboard sign out in front of their shop, and you knew that you could bring your power cord and your phone, and they would charge it for you. And some places were like serving tea or coffee while you sit there and wait for your phone to charge. So this became part of the center of gravity of the whole disaster. The most important thing for people is not to power their house with power, it's to get their cell phone charged so they stay interconnected with everybody.
Wow, that's awesome. Can anybody else? Does anybody else want to jump in and?
One of the first NGOs to land there.
You're sort of breaking up, Josh.
I prefer Robo-Joss.
Hey, Joss, is there a way that you can maybe turn your camera off? And the same thing that happened to James?
Can't hear you. Do you want me to continue? Or wait?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't hear you. There we go. Are you there?
My camera. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sort of. So can you just say the last bit after you talked about the sort of center of gravity being the charging stations? You were talking about something else and you got cut off. Joss?
Yeah.
Did
so
you get
the other?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just getting a little delay here. I'm not sure if I think my Wi-Fi cacked out in my house. Maybe that's it. The other thing that happened was one of the first NGOs to show up. It had a giant began. So basically, what they did is they hooked up the entire UN OCHA task force headquarters with Wi-Fi through a big, huge satellite. And so all of the NGOs, all of the Canadian Forces military personnel, all of the host nation military, police, everybody was using their Gmail account to coordinate with each other. So all of our fancy military D1 systems, everybody was using Gmail to be able to talk to everybody. And without Gmail and that big BGAN, nobody would have been able to talk to anybody at all that whole time.
Wow. And what was this? Sorry, you got cut out there. What was this BGAN? It was like a satellite.
So it was a British NGO, and I apologize, I don't know their name, but
okay.
What they had every NGO, UN OCHA, the Canadian military, and representatives from the provincial government, the provincial police, the local police, all in a government building. So they had us all in one big ballroom, which was like a broke-down palace. So they put this big BGAN on the balcony out there to give everybody, all of the NGOs, police, host nation military, and everything, Wi-Fi access, where it otherwise was none.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Can anybody else jump in and talk about the level of connectivity of the local nationals, both prior and during or after the natural disaster that they deployed for? How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I was actually just gonna chime in there. So I know that Scotty and I did have an interesting experience, much like Joss had mentioned about the thing that the people cared most about was charging their cell phones. We actually went out to do a radio distribution of hand crank radios, and everything seemed to be going fine at first, although there were quite a few people gathering to receive these radios that we were trying to deliver, so they get critical information, like health and safety information from the local radio station out in these remote regions where they didn't have power. Their radios had been destroyed. But what really kind of set the crowd off into a frenzy almost was the fact that they realized that the radio, which was hand crank, could actually charge their cell phones. It had a little USB port in there. So as we were doing the distribution, once this information spread across the crowd, it actually became mildly violent, where the younger males, I would say between the ages of about like 12 to 13 and like early 20s, were I would say they were agitated almost. They were very aggressive in trying to get what we had, to the point where they were pushing away some of the other locals, like the elderly, and like the women and children who were actually like trying to, like, who were up at the front closer. And it was actually astounding. Like when you think back on it and look back on it, and you say, like, the fact that like they knew that these things could charge their cell phones so that they could have some sort of connectivity to the outside world. When you're in the mountains of Nepal, you don't really think that's going to be something that they consider, that they value. But it was a huge deciding factor for them. And like I said, I think Scott can speak to it as well, that like he witnessed a younger male like push down an old woman to get a radio, to which a bunch of other guys saw that, like local nationals, and they actually punished him within the crowd. Like they actually like physically beat him for pushing down this old woman to get a radio, but he was willing to basically do whatever he could to get what we had, because he knew it could charge his cell phone. So that's really the story that I have from my.
So did you know, like, that when the radio was picked to be distributed, did you know that it had that capability, or was the radio chosen because of that?
So the radio, yes, it was chosen for that reason as well. Since this incident and since that deployment, we've actually looked at the requirement for the radio and what we need to. I don't know how to really say this. Like we've looked at buying a cheaper radio.
Right.
Not that it doesn't have that capability, but that it looks less impressive. Because the ones we bought cost about $50 or $60 Canadian, I think.
Oh wow.
And either James or Scotty can correct me on this one. They're pretty expensive to buy, and they're pretty flashy looking. I mean, they're ruggedized, they're heavy, they're decent quality. And when you bring it to somewhere where they have nothing or all the things have been destroyed, it definitely looks like it's something of value, which is part of the reason why I think we had that issue.
And what kind of numbers were you distributing them? Like thousands of them?
No. So normally when we go into a village, we would give them to the village elders. We give them to specific families in small numbers, like 3 or 4. This one we actually were going out with 60 radios.
Yeah.
And for a number of reasons, there turned out to be a big crowd, and they realized that we only had 60 radios, and there were about 200 of them. So things kind of went a little bit sideways there, but once they figured out that it had the capacity to charge their cell phones, was really when the crowd started to get a little bit into a frenzy because they wanted them so badly.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of like food riots and things like that, but I've never heard of a riot around hand crank radios. So that's a new one. Yeah. Scotty, do you have anything to add to that?
No, he's pretty much got that down pat. Yeah, I was on the ground when they were distributed from the back of the I guess we had gator type platforms.
Yeah.
And it was pretty crazy. We definitely saw a lot of people getting aggressive, getting violent over just radios, like hand crank radios.
Yeah.
Something that we would never think is a very high priority for them, but
it's obvious that there was both prior and following the natural disaster, like an incredibly high level of mobile, whether it be internet, social media, but usage by the local nationals. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of what people were craving was just information. Like nobody knew what was going on.
Right.
Nobody knew the status of their families and such because the connectivity was hindered by the disaster. So people were just nervous for information.
Yeah. When you were doing some of your village assessments, was that usually it's about water and first aid or medical care. Was that a something that they were asking for? Was connectivity?
I think it was more so electricity, but I think that kind of comes with it, is the connectivity.
Yeah.
A lot of people were without electricity, and those who were still weren't getting the information they needed, maybe because the broadcasting posts were not functioning as well because of electricity.
Right.
Yeah, I can speak to that as well. When we went to the villages, we asked the standard questions about whether they had enough food or what their shelter situation was like, whether or not they had electricity. And it did come up that they didn't have information, but I don't think within the regions we were looking that their primary source was necessarily the radio. So when we were talking about, do you have electricity? They're like, no, we really want electricity. We need electricity back. Their first thought wasn't we need radios to get information. It was we need electricity so we can get our cell phones
right.
to get the information. So I mean, we would lead them into that category or into that topic because we had some radios, so we were kind of looking for the leaders of the village or wherever we were, so we could pass a couple out as we were kind of passing through doing our assessments, and telling them, okay, if you tune into this radio station, they'll have the information that you're looking for. But they weren't really focused so much on FM radio as they were. We want electricity. So.
Yeah. And an interesting add-on to that is a lot of the people that I talked with actually mentioned that they listened to the radio station over their cell phone.
Okay. Yeah.
And the one thing that hasn't been touched on that I found when I talked with people is, as eager as they were to get information in, there was some frustration with the fact that they were sending out tweets, they were putting out posts on Facebook and that, and from their perception, they were getting information out that the government wasn't paying attention to. So, it's worth noting that one of the critical things at the beginning is to start mining the information on the social media, because a lot gets out that way. It's not organized so much, but there's a lot of information flowing that way.
Yeah, and that actually really sort of opens us up for the next question, and that's really all about based on the type of tasks that you talked about doing before, and I'm going to do some because all of the people sort of watching this or reading my reports, most of them are civilians, so I'll be putting a lot of background into what is a CIMIC report and things, a CIMIC study and that sort of thing. But based on the kind of tasks that we talked about that you outlined earlier in the discussion, how could social media have assisted you in their completion? So James, I've still got you up. So if you want to keep talking about that sort of data mining, that would be I think an interesting piece.
Well, I think one of the key things that could happen fairly painlessly, whether it be within the UN or within a Canadian DART contingent, we talked about this when we were deployed. During the deployment is not the time to start building a social media presence, right, because people just aren't going to be looking for it. They're going to want to know something that already exists. So however you want to set it up, if it's through UN OCHA or it's through a Canadian embassy, or if the DART were to stand up some kind of social media presence that's permanent, like a Facebook page, and then when a specific disaster takes place, they could create a group for that, right, then people communicate to that, and you're actually receiving the information as well as being able to communicate back. As far as how social media could have assisted us, well, I think we did use some of it in a very basic way as far as trying to understand, who are the key communicators in the area. Cherrycott, city of Cherrycott, where there was extensive damage. When I had to go there with Pat Castonguay at the beginning, one of the things we did before we went is we looked at, on Facebook, typed in Cherrycott to see, is there somebody that's broadcasting from there? What kind of messaging are they putting out? Yeah. And somebody had actually stood up a Facebook page for Cherrycott to show the damage and the needs that were there. So there is a way to do it. It's not rocket science. It's just people have to stop being afraid of it and get on with using it.
Right. So, I just want you to touch on, you talk about people being afraid of it. What do you mean by that? Because most, I know what you're talking about, but a lot of civilians won't understand what you're talking about, a fear of social media.
I can answer that probably. I think it's the chain of command's reluctancy to have any kind of negative image out there on the web.
Right.
So I think it's more so a military thing because I know police do it very well. Some of the 911 services do it very well.
Yeah.
Use social media, but I think the military is just incredibly scared of doing it incorrectly. So they're going to take another 10 years before they figure out how to do it correctly before we can actually see it
Right.
in use.
Yeah.
And if I can just pile on there, I think it's also like lack of control, maybe. So you can put out the message. Oh, Joss is trying to say something.
Robo Joss.
But I was saying like lack of control. So once you've thought out the message you want to put out and you put it out there, it's out there for good. And anyone who sees it can say whatever they want about it. They can take whatever they want from it. They can contextualize it however they want. So I think that's a reluctancy as well with the military is when you're using social media, they're a little bit afraid that they're losing control of whatever
Right.
they put out there because it's susceptible to anyone to do whatever they want with or to think whatever they want about. So that's just my point.
Yeah. So what other kind of tasks, so obviously, we can information gather or data mine, and do sort of, I guess situation reports on damaged areas. How else could we use social media, do you think?
Well, if you look at what happened in Haiti with the earthquake, there's actually a pretty good example where social media was used to track, locate, and communicate the location of people that were trapped in the rubble
Right.
to the responders so they could go get them out. And then another interesting thing too that I've been reading a bit of and looking at some presentations on TED online for is with the new cell phones, for example, the Samsung Active, you can actually use it to take somebody's heart rate, and there's apps now for checking for malaria with blood samples. So the more and more that the social media gets used to communicate that sort of stuff, you can
Right.
actually start your info gathering and mapping out whatever it is you're looking at real time as you're going.
Yeah.
It's Joss. Can
Anyone
I chime
else?
in here?
Yeah, please.
So I just like to bring up the point of the example when the Canadian government was looking into the possibility in Syrian refugees here. There was a news article that comes to mind here. They were talking about they sent out 42,000 texts to people in refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon, and in Turkey, and something like 24,000 people responded that still had cell phones working.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, only 24,000 people still had a working cell phone. And I was amazed that after how many years of this conflict that, people...
You cut out there, Josh.
So obviously, if that's the case, that 24,000, and you'll have to go back and find the article, it wasn't too long ago, if 2,000 people in refugee camps who have nothing, just the clothes on their back and fled for their life with their kids, thought it was important enough to not only take their phones with them, but maintain their functionality and keeping a charge and keeping their account live or whatever it was. Obviously, like, key ground for those people, that vital ground for those people is to ensure that they still have connectivity, lifeline. That is absolutely, essential. Like, you bring food, you bring water, you bring clothing, you bring your cell phone.
And there's, and I can't remember, it came up in one of my previous courses that more people in the world have cell phones than toothbrushes. So that sort of puts it in perspective to me about, how important this mobile connection really is nowadays. is there any other, we talked about, sort of gathering information, but, what about communicating within the disaster area using social media? Is that possible? Is there a potential there, or really do we just have the capability to listen?
I had an interesting thought.
Okay.
As we were talking about, how the riots or the demand for the wind-up radios and the new industry spawning up for charging, if we were to bring a small Honda generators hooked up to a panel of just sockets and plop it down into the middle of a community where you wanted to do an assessment, think about that's almost like dropping free food or water into the middle of the village. Imagine using that as a face-to-face tool to bring people out from their homes, from wherever they're hiding, and say, hey, look, free cell phone charging. You put a charge station down, and then while their phones are charging, you've got a great opportunity to sit there and communicate with people and conduct face-to-face interviews with them to find out how they're doing, what their needs are, and do those kinds of assessments face-to-face. Rather than you walking through the village and trying to engage people, you just set up this very, very attractive, shiny thing in the middle of a village and let them come to you. So you're providing a service and you're getting the information that you need.
I like that.
It's sort of using it like it's kind of a secondary effect where we're using their addiction, I would say, their demand for social media and connectivity as a way to get around, as an icebreaker, to get to talk to them, to use your interpreter, to conduct those face-to-face, find out who's who in the zoo in a village. Rather, it seems to me like a huge time saver. Rather than trying to go through the village and find all that stuff out, you plonk this big shiny thing right down in the middle and let them come to you.
Do you even charge, bro?
Anyone else have something along those lines that they want to discuss? You mentioned, of course, using your interpreter. Is there a way that social media can help break down those barriers that exist between the DART team and local nationals?
Google Translate.
Is that a viable?
Well, if they've got connectivity and they've got a cell phone, then theoretically they could use Google Translate. We're going to a disaster-affected place. It's probably going to be a third-world nation because first world and developing nations have their own, disaster capabilities to deal with that kind of thing. So we assume that we're going to these, backward third-world places. So, but here we're all talking about, look at based on our shared experience, they're not so backward. They're using cell phones in places where they may never have had a hardline telephone tower, where they may not have ever had electricity lines, like they skipped the whole 19th century, right? But here they are in these backward little third world places where they all have cell phones. So why wouldn't we be able to use, a Wi-Fi connection and Google Translate to be able to speak to people without using interpreters? It may not be perfect, but it would get the point across.
Anyone else?
I think, in Nepal we were using it mostly to connect with the other NGOs. But we were using our own accounts and stuff like that. I think if there was some sort of set up account where we could connect with some of the NGOs going over, we could do a little bit of prep work before just running into them at random in our own AO.
So could social media be used to help prioritize work of the of the people in the disaster zone, whether they be military, governmental, or NGO?
I'll touch on this one, I guess. I think that it probably could be a tool. My personal view on this is that OCHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance or Affairs, I can never remember which one. It's the body that's supposed to be able to determine what the needs are in which locations and when, and really bring in all those players, all the major NGOs, and say, okay, yeah, we need shelter in this location, we need food in this location, we need water here, and it has a very, very difficult time getting NGOs to do what is best for the people at the time that's best for the people in the location that's best for the people. Purely because NGOs don't need to listen, and in order for them to make money, they need to be able to either have results or at least have maybe pictures of them having results. So in my limited experience, I've seen them do what's best for the NGO at any given time, not necessarily what OCHA is saying that they should be doing in order to help the people. So I think social media could be used to distribute some of that information. I don't know how good it would be at actually, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, type of thing.
Yeah, because my thought is, and I've heard the same thing. We face the same thing in Afghanistan and Bosnia, that you have these different groups out there and doing whatever they please, and nobody wants to. The NGOs require that not autonomy, but they don't want to be seen as working for the military, for example. That they need that sort of arm's length relationship. So my thought was, what about the concept that, again, you're using social media, so rather than having, the UN OCHA rep saying, yeah, I need you to do this and I need you to do that, to sort of everything, you're sort of managing the unmanageable by using a social media platform where people perhaps are volunteering services to areas that require them, rather than and not feeling like they're being directed or ordered to do things. Does that resonate with anyone?
I think what we're doing is we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
First of all, the first question is, could social media be used to command and coordinate the activities of NGOs and other governmental departments through UN OCHA? Absolutely, no question about it. They're talking. The Air Force is always talking about using Xbox controllers to control the next generation of drones and all this stuff, user interface, because everybody already knows how to use them. It's the same thing with this. Why wouldn't you use a tool that everybody already comes to theater trained how to use? To me, that's a no-brainer. The second question is whether or not the NGOs will actually do what they're told and listen to UN OCHA. Whole nother issue. My experience is NGOs do what NGOs do, which suits what their funding base will tolerate or wants them to do. So whether UN OCHA says go to this village and do this, they're going to do what they need to do, which allows them to exist. So whether they do that or not is a whole other issue.
Yeah, James just put up because I think he's having trouble broadcasting. Do you want to? I didn't get to read it off in time, James. Can you either read it off or post it back up, and I'll read it off?
Yeah. Can you hear me there, John?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was getting at is, I think that whoever ends up taking the lead with social media and has the most followers for the disaster is going to have the most, I don't know if you want to use power or influence within that area to be able to direct where the NGOs go. So the NGOs need to build their profile, like was mentioned, because that's how they get donors.
Right.
And if UN is running like a public affairs cell that's saying, the greatest need for X is in location Bravo, then what it does is it creates the opportunity for the NGOs to go there and get the visibility by filling that need, if it's within their niche. So I think it's a bit of leaning forward and harnessing the power of it rather than being dragged along by it.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping, is the idea that, because it's being done through social media, again, it's not like they're being directed. It's almost like they're volunteering, to be able to apply their niche support capability where it's required, rather than just doing as they please. Um, and we sort of talked on it a bit, but sorry, we've talked on it a lot, but I'd like to talk on it some more. Is that, you know, how could social media help to improve communications between, the multitude of local nationals, uh, NGOs, GOs in the theater? Like you talked about using Gmail accounts and things like that. How else did you, how else were you communicating with each other in the field?
Is that for me?
It could be for whoever.
Well, I know that the Wi-Fi connectivity was established by this NGO with this giant BGAN thing, and that was like without that thing, nobody from UN OCHA or any of the NGOs would have been able to talk to each other at all. So that whole thing was broadcast to the headquarters where everybody was centrally located, and without that, there was no telephone lines. It would have been like, would have been like 100 years ago where people were passing messages verbally by hand.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't happen. So everybody immediately signed up for a Google account or a Gmail account.
Yeah.
And even we were using, but I mean, restricted in that respect. We would have had way better comms with NGOs and UN OCHA. So we weren't allowed to use Gmail accounts, obviously, but
Right.
would have been way better if we were allowed to.
And I assume that the reason that you weren't allowed to was security?
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, we sort of lost you there, Joss. I'm not sure if you had
Go
something.
Through the regular internet. So they didn't. On the government system, you're not allowed to have a Gmail account or whatever. So, but had I had my own laptop there,
right, then there wouldn't have been an issue.
Means of communication. There were NGOs communicating with us personally through our Facebook because you could immediately add them as a Facebook friend. And they're communicating with you for work things. Hey, listen, I'm over in blah blah blah, and there's a flood here. Can you guys bring whatever? And then that gets fed into the regular military chain of command through the person they contacted.
Nice.
Kind of a backdoor way to do it, but it was just a way for us to get around our restrictive regulations regarding social media.
Right.
I can add one thing there.
Yeah, please.
I don't know if this is necessarily social media, but within the headquarters, Stu Thomas, who was there for most of the time for us, he actually established like a Google Drive account where anytime that we came back with any sort of report, we'd been to any location, done any sort of assessment, he would go on Google Drive, pull up a map, and he could plot on that location or the location of where the report had happened with MGRS or lat long, and he could attach to that any sort of like documents, reports, or anything that we'd come up with, so that when we all finally came back together to the headquarters, or if the commander or any of the staff wanted to see where we were getting this information from, he could pull up this map and it would have all these little pinpoints on it from where we had been. You could click on those pinpoints, bring up the reports, all that kind of stuff. So that worked for our small little team. But I think on a grander scale, if we had some sort of open source map like that where certain organizations or NGOs or militaries had access to be able to add things to that, it could be a pretty good tool to show where people had been, the things they had seen, the reports that they had developed while they were there. So, like I said, it was good for our small little team, but I think it could be expanded to a larger size as well.
Yeah. Do you know if if other organizations were using other platforms in a similar method?
I do, actually. So myself and Scott, we were working with an organization called Samaritan's Purse, which is an NGO, and when they send out their field teams, they sent every team out with an iPad mini, which was SIM card enabled, had 3G, and they had their own platform on there. I shouldn't say it was their own. It was called iForm Builder, or iForm is their platform, which allows you to basically build your own reports within the app. So they took the OSHA report that was paper that I remember Scotty and I out in the rain trying to write on and trying to keep dry in our little Gator, which had no windows or doors. And that was a challenge, but these guys would go with an iPad. It was all digitized, all drop-down menus. Plus, it gave you GPS location, so you never had to write down the grid. You could take photos with it. It would save it all in the same report, all with this one device. And as soon as you hit save, it would upload it to their main server. And back at their headquarters, whoever was monitoring their dashboard, the report would come in. It would automatically populate a spot on their map, showing exactly where they had been because it's geotagged, it's geolocated. Their report would be there, the photos would be there, everything they had done in the field, as soon as they hit send, would be on their map. So their dashboard was fantastic. It showed everywhere their teams had been, and it completely interconnected them all the time. So they actually end up giving us rights to use their platform. They gave us their username and password. So when we went out and did our own assessments using our own personal iPhones, we would open it up, do the report, do the location, take some photos, and we would submit it so that they would have the information that we were gathering because we were gathering it anyway. So they essentially added us as a member of their team.
Nice. And you know, and it sounds like that wouldn't have happened unless they had this social media platform.
No, exactly not. Like that's it enabled them to have real-time data from their teams in the field.
Well, and the other thing that it also probably provided, because these iPads are GPS enabled, it's almost a bit of a Blue Force tracker as well, right? The guys back at the dashboard or at the headquarters are able to tell exactly where their teams are out in the field. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, as long as they're uploading their stuff as they go. I suppose if they were using like the Find My iPhone or Find My iPad app, they could probably locate them at any given time as well. So,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year was that? Was it just last year, Zach?
Yeah, that was just last year.
Yeah. So when I went in 2013, our NGO stall was the star of the show. Every NGO that was going out to a specific area, nobody had anything like that, right? Even just 3 years ago. So what they would do is they would come to us, and we had sort of a ready rack of maps ready to go that we would map tack for them and send them out with it so they could be able to navigate around and know where they were going. And then everybody, of course, is using cameras to take pictures and bringing back the reports and doing everything by hand. So even in just that short period of time, between 2013 and 2015 or 14 or whenever Nepal happened, look at the technological advancements that are happening using social media, an app, and a device.
Yeah.
As compared to when we went, just 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what, and you're right, and it shows not just the advancements in technology, but that these organizations are actually getting on board with using them, which of course is something we struggle with in the military. We struggle staying ahead of, not even staying ahead of, but staying on the curve of latest technology. So.
Yeah, and 50 years ago it wasn't the case. The military advanced everything. All the best technology now came from military research way back in the day, and now the military's fallen behind the curve because the rest of society has taken right off and left us behind. It's amazing.
Yeah. So we've mentioned a handful of pros of how we can use social media. Are there any cons with regards to using social media to complete these tasks, or the use of social media in the disaster space?
I think one of the big ones is what I talked about as a pro in terms of the military's fear of getting the wrong message out. Is if you do get the wrong message out, you can't really take it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And major companies do it, right? Major companies that have brands that have money on the line. That they take these calculated risks to using social media and do it incredibly effectively. It would be interesting to see, how other militaries are tackling that problem. if they are or if they're avoiding it. So.
I have an example from Nepal again of social media use that was negative in the response area. It has to do with rumors,
Right.
and it wasn't propagated by our military or any of the NGOs, but it was. I think it was some sort of like meteorological service or geological service had said that it was likely that there was going to be an aftershock that was bigger than the initial earthquake due to the
Right.
fact of, they talked about the pressures of the plates and the fact that not all of the energy had been released and blah 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 blah, and that spread like wildfire throughout the social media community and made its way to some pretty remote areas. I was actually surprised when we were going up to these remote areas and they were talking about the fact that there's this big earthquake supposed to be coming, bigger than the first one. So, just after everyone had started to feel a little bit more safe, they started to, try and rebuild a little bit, started to try and move back into their homes. Everyone was again like now outside, sleeping under tarps, and they were scared. They were fearful that this big earthquake was going to come because social media had really like blown up with this rumor of another huge earthquake happening or an aftershock that was bigger than the initial one, which had a really negative effect. And
Yeah.
everywhere we went, we had to try and kind of defeat this rumor that it's not really a credible source. We don't know that for sure. All those different types of things come along with trying to defeat a rumor. But yeah, anyway, that was my one
sorry,
example.
and you say it was a rumor. Like, what was the, were you was unit sorry, were all the operators on the ground quickly or able to actually dispel this as a rumor, or was this from a valid scientific organization that there was truth to this message?
Well, I think it was just I can't quote the source of it. Maybe
Right.
either James or Scott can. I know it was just from the World Wide Web out there somewhere, which obviously everyone believes as soon as it's posted.
Of course.
And sorry, just to touch on that too, there was a popular radio host that was also spreading the same rumor,
Okay.
and everybody was listening to him. And when they actually got connectivity back up with the radio, it was further spreading like wildfire.
Yeah. So let's use that as an example, and let's say that that it wasn't a rumor, that it was actually true, that a scientific organization had shown that there is, there are going to be, aftershocks and things like that. Could we, how could we have used social media? Like if were using social media, could we have used social media to maybe not minimize the impact of that message, but actually to, provide people with support and education through social media?
Absolutely. I think, well, just due to the fact that that message made its way to some of these remote communities faster than we were able to get there even.
Right.
We started to hear about it from people who were in these remote communities. They told us, and then we had to go confirm later on, like where they had actually heard it from, check social media. But if you're able to get on that early and hear about it, then you kind of tag on to whatever the message that they're hearing is. You start to talk about what the safety concerns are, what they should be doing in order to actually, public service announcements,
Right.
Health and safety, that kind of stuff. You can you tie into whatever the rumor is, and you just tell them how to deal with it. And
Yeah.
I definitely think that if that message is able to move that quickly through so many people, if you're telling them how to deal with it and how you can help with it, or how they can help themselves with it, I think it's going to spread equally as fast. Yeah, I think it's definitely possible.
And to think that maybe the same thing could be done, they sort of, for the most part, know that those sort of, 6 hours prior to a natural disaster, not always, but that they know that something is coming or something is happening, to be able to react quickly with public service announcements using potentially social media might be, provide people with the knowledge or the whatever that they need in order to survive the disaster better.
Yeah, I definitely think you could touch out to people like that. One of the examples I'm going to use though is, and it's going to be on military suicide. As soon as somebody gets killed with takes his own life with the forces,
Right.
it spreads like wildfire across the forces. Like
That's right.
even just a couple weeks ago when we were in Victoria, we had a death amongst the forces, and it
Yep.
was in Halifax. And I think most of us knew about it within hours before it would have even hit the media.
That's right.
So if you can have that kind of resonation with something like that, then actual truths and facts that you can get out to people, I think would be insanely beneficial.
Yeah. And again, to me, it goes back to exactly what you've been talking about, Scott, is that, we need to manage that risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
That level of fear that the military has or government has of social media, manage that risk and actually empower operators with the tools, left and rights of arcs, proper messaging. There is ways to do this, because again, huge corporations depend on it daily for their brand image. So, it's amazing that we struggle with it, whereas others do not.
I think where that struggle is though is mostly where these corporations take the risk. It deals with money, whereas
Right.
for us it deals with lives. And if you can manage that, it's an easier sell.
Well, but often it doesn't, sorry, you're right. In some cases it does involve lives, but often it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Often it is, or appears to be, more of a, like you said before, a fear of saying the wrong thing that we can't take back, of image more than anything.
Mm-hmm. I
think
think
it's more image, branding, and credibility is the risk, more so than people getting injured or losing their life.
Potentially, yeah. So let's see, what else was I going to ask? One thing that I hadn't mentioned yet was, what about the idea of social media being used as a reach back capability? We had Radio Rana when we were in Afghanistan. What about social media reach back? Anybody want to jump on that?
One of the guys is better to talk about this, but I heard a story about how you guys were communicating, and it was I think it was the PsyOps OPFOR that was doing it, where they were using, in order to transmit huge amounts of data, videos, pictures, all that stuff, they were setting up, I think it was like a Gmail account, and you'd put all the information you wanted to share into the drafts folder,
Yeah.
and then you would, through other means, tell everybody else what the username and password was. So if, let's say I want to send this to you, you already know my username and password for this Gmail account we've set up. I put everything I want you to know in the drafts folder, and then you'd log into it, and you get it, and you can see it, and it's never actually been sent over the internet. But a huge amount of information can be stored that way,
Right.
and then shared through other people, and that's just the first thing that comes to mind. But as far as reach back goes, this is the fastest, easiest way humans have ever had to communicate history. You have it in your pocket at all times, and you're constantly on it. We're all constantly, zombified by our phones. So to say that you couldn't use it for reach back capability is ridiculous. Like it's the fastest, easiest way to communicate for anything. And it goes anywhere in the world, anywhere you have a 3G or a Wi-Fi connection, and there's Wi-Fi hotspots unsecured everywhere, all over the world. So it's actually probably the fastest way to get reach back that I can think of.
Yeah.
And like I said, with the whole Gmail and the drafts folder thing, I know it was a tricky trick that I think Al Qaeda was using initially, but it's genius. And you don't have to be limited by, I want to send this huge data file and I can't send it because it's going to take too long or it's too big or my email inbox won't accept it or let me send it. You don't even have to send it. It just has to be there. You just have to have the people with the right
password and username information at the other end in order for them to have it. And
Well,
now that there's the cloud.
Yeah. Well, that's how that Lieutenant Navy that we've put away for a long time, how he was communicating with his Russian handlers. It wasn't through a Gmail account, but it was through another email service, and that's exactly it. Was they were never sending emails; they just had the same login password and were sharing drafts with information. Yeah. Sorry. So, anybody else want to talk about potentially how we could be using Reachback or with social media? Oh, there's a good one from James. An example is Google Hangouts allowed us to call back to Canada for free from all countries. Nice. And yeah, anyone else? Could the use of social media reduce the number of operators required in the field, or at least improve their effectiveness? And where I come from for this question is, we often refer to influence activity operators, SIOPs or CIMIC, as a force multiplier, right? That a 4-person CIMIC det has the potential to have a bigger impact on the ground than a 4-person infantry than an infantry section or whatever. So so again, could the use of social media reduce the number of operators required in the field, or could it at least improve their effectiveness?
I think with the use of social media, you can't really replace or reduce the number of operators, because I think the operators themselves, like you said, are the force multipliers. If you have what we do, you need to have that face-to-face. You need to have that person-to-person communication. But like my earlier story kind of touched on, I think you can improve their effectiveness. So as we could see through that other example with digitizing and instantaneous uploading and tracking of information, I think that it can improve your effectiveness, decrease the amount of time that your information takes to get from point A back to your headquarters. But in terms of reducing number of operators in the field, in terms of IA, I don't think so.
Right, and James typed a little something that said exactly what you were saying, that it doesn't remove the manpower, or sorry, it doesn't reduce the manpower requirement. It just increases their capability. So, would everybody agree that that's a fair assessment?
Yeah,
I would agree.
Okay.
I think that.
Yep.
Sorry, it's Joss. I think that using social media could potentially, I agree with Zach in that it's never going to be a substitute for operators on the ground, but like you look at the example of a leaflet drop. It takes planes, a whole bunch of paper, it takes all the production people, it takes the pilots and the operators and all that stuff to actually drop leaflets. Now, you replace those leaflets with something that pops up like an SMS thing, or like an SMS generator, or something that pops up on your Facebook.
Yeah.
Instead, so now you don't need a plane, you don't need the pilots or the air crews or the printing press. There's all kinds of things that you don't need because you're now disseminating it onto people's Facebook pages, or they're getting a text from you instead. So I think in that respect, yeah, absolutely, using Facebook or social media can absolutely limit or reduce the number of people you need to accomplish the same job.
That's awesome. Listen, guys, unless somebody wants to add something else, I really want to thank you for taking over an hour out of your time tonight and spending it with me online. It's again, like I've said in the previous emails, this is an academic piece for me, and but I believe that I'm doing this out of professional interest. So I'm hoping that some of the discussion that we've had tonight will sort of point me in the direction that I want to further continue my studies. If there's anything else you wanted to add, or down the road to talk to me about, please, I encourage you to. Again, it's been a real pleasure, and I'm sure that there will be some of my classmates who watch this on YouTube, and they're always incredibly supportive of both their military and ours. So thanks so much. Unless somebody had something else to add on to our discussion, we'll sign her off from there.
No, that's it. Thanks a lot, John.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Okay. You guys have a good night.
You too.